Parvati Bhagini, you can start.
Hari Om. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Grathitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitaamrutavarshini Bhagavati Ashtadashaadhyayini Amba Swamanusandadhami Bhagavad-gite Bhavadveshini Namostute Vyasa-vishala-buddhe Phullaravindayata-patra-netra Yena tvaya Bharata-taila-purnaha Prajvalito jnanamayah pradipah Prapanna parijataya Stotravetraikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gītāmృతduhe namaha Sarvopanishado gavo Dogdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsasudhir-bhokta Dugdham Geetamrutam Mahat Vasudevasutam Devam Kamsachanuramardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Bhishma-dronatata Jayadratha-jala Gandhara-nilotpala Shalyagrahavati Kripena Vahani Karnena Velakula Ashvathama-vikarna Ghora-makara Duryodhana-vartini Sotirna khalu Pandavairananadi Kaivartakah Keshavaha Parasharya-vachah sarojamamalam Geetartha-gandhoৎkatam Nanakhyanaka-kesaram harikatha Sambodhana bodhitam Loke sajjana षट्पदैरहरहः पेपीयमानं मुदा भूयाद् भारतपङ्कजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसिनः श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुल्लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः। धन्यवादः।
Hari Om Bhagini, धन्यवादः. नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च आसं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तं तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरुं सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानामालयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ परं वरिष्ठं ब्रह्मिष्ठं परमानन्दरूपिणं परमार्थानन्दयतिं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। So, as I had mentioned in the last class, I will now try and present an overview of the entire Bhagavad-gita, and then I will also connect it back to the spiritual journey that we discussed in Introduction to Vedanta, as well as the lecture that I gave for the Singapore group, which is called as Vedanta Post-Retirement Hobby. I will connect the spiritual journey with Gita as well as Upanishads, so that you will be able to understand where exactly all these are fitting in. Okay, so first part we will cover the overview of the Gita. Now, the first chapter of the Gita and the first 10 verses of the second chapter presents the background for the Gita teaching to take place. So the background being the Mahabharata battlefield just before the war was about to start. Now we already know the story, so there's no necessity for us to dwell on that. The Pandavas, including Arjuna, are very sure that their fight is a dharma yuddham. They have thought through this for years, for decades, more than a decade, and they are fighting for their own rights. All non-violent methods have failed, and therefore, as a last resort, they're taking to dharma yuddham. With this attitude, they have assembled during the crucial time, right, in the war front, and at exactly the point, right, just before the start of war, Bhishmacharya and others have blown the conches, indicating the start of the war, and Arjuna feels like surveying, right, the opposite army, and Lord Krishna places, he is requesting Lord Krishna to place the chariot, and Lord Krishna, who is the charioteer, the driver, is actually placing the chariot right in front of a few people towards whom Arjuna has intense emotional attachment. In a way, I think it was very appropriate of Krishna to do that, because that is when all the emotions get triggered, and if it were to happen afterwards, after the start of the war, it could have been very detrimental, right? So Krishna placed the chariot right in front of Bhishma, Drona and others, and the moment Arjuna saw them, right, his mind went to the future, right, of the war, after the war. If they win the war, what will happen? They will have to kill all those people, and he wondered what will the victory be without these near and dear ones. This emotional attachment towards them led to an intense grief in his mind, right? And when he faces this raga and shoka, attachment and grief, not actually for the actual loss of them, but just the imaginary loss, right? That gives him intense grief, and which leads to a intellectual confusion called moha. So raga, shoka, attachment, grief, leading to moha, confusion regarding dharma and adharma. Even though a few moments before he had seen the war as dharma yuddham, suddenly because of the delusion, the very same yuddha appears to be adharma. The only saving grace is that he doubts whether his thinking is right or wrong. After giving a huge lecture to Krishna, you will remember he used 3 different angles, and Swamiji puts it very nice. So I also talked about it in 3 different angles: the spiritual angle, the laukika angle, the ethical angle, right? The dharmika angle. He used all of this to try and convince Krishna that this war is not a appropriate war, right? So Krishna had to listen to all of this, the lecturing by Arjuna. Thereafter, Arjuna surrenders to Krishna, seeking a solution for this confusion. Then Lord Krishna accepts Arjuna as his disciple and begins his discourse, which starts from the 11th verse of the 2nd chapter. So the entire teaching goes up to the 66th verse of the 18th chapter, which we completed recently. So Ashoshyanan Vachoshastvam to Sarvadharman Parityajya, the teaching of this. The first part of the teaching is giving a confirmation to Arjuna that this war is a legitimate dharma yuddham only. Therefore, you need not have any delusion with regard to that. It is a righteous war. You will not incur papam because of this. You will only get punyam. In fact, running away from this war will give you papam called pratyavaya papam, because you are going to be failing in your duty. Just as a soldier in the crucial time of the war, he can't be talking about non-violence. Similarly, here Arjuna can't talk about ahimsa. Ahimsa in the wrong place is adharma, right? So it's exactly like, a patient needs to be operated and the doctor suddenly says, no, this is ahimsa, I will not operate, right? So that is incorrect. He's failing in his duty. That is papam, right? So the moha, the delusion part, was removed by Krishna by the brief teaching, pointing out that this is the dharma yuddham only. Then the remaining problems of emotions, that attachment and the consequent sorrow, is not only Arjuna's problem, but it is a universal problem. Every human being has got the problem of attachment, emotional dependence on things and beings. As long as this emotional dependence is there, fear can't be avoided, anxiety can't be avoided, worry can't be avoided, disappointment can't be avoided, sorrow also can't be avoided, right? So emotional dependence on things and beings is the cause of all human problem. So Lord Krishna feels it's a universal problem called samsara, and this samsara can't be solved by superficial methods. Temporarily we may forget our grief by doing something else or going somewhere else, but the permanent solution against this is only spiritual knowledge. It's the only permanent solution for emotional dependence and the consequent fear and sorrow. So therefore, Lord Krishna decides to give the self-knowledge to Arjuna through the entire Bhagavad-gita to give a permanent solution to attachment and sorrow. So attachment and sorrow together is called samsara. Permanent solution is called moksha. Therefore, Gita is moksha from samsara through self-knowledge. So subject matter of the Gita is moksha from samsara by getting self-knowledge. So therefore, Shankaracharya calls Bhagavad Gita as Moksha Shastra. So this self-knowledge is the ultimate goal, requiring a long spiritual journey involving several spiritual disciplines. So the self-knowledge is an ultimate goal which has to be attained by following several spiritual disciplines, and Lord Krishna presents these disciplines through the entire Gita. So Acharyas who comment upon the Gita divide the entire Bhagavad Gita into 3 sections called Shatkam. Shatkam meaning a section considering of 6 chapters. Prathamashadham from 1 to 6th chapter, Madhyamashadham from 7th to 12th, and Charamashadham, Antimashadham from 13th to 18th. Thus in 3 Shadkams, Bhagavan gives the teaching, and in teaching each of these Shadkams, the Lord emphasizes 3 important disciplines, right? So in each Shadkam, 3 disciplines are highlighted. So totally we have 3 by 3, 9 topics, right, spread over the Gita. So we'll quickly go over this in this order, right? All the 9 we will see briefly. So in the Prathama Shadkam, 3 topics are highlighted. Number 1 is Prayatnaha. Number 2 is Karma Yoga. Number 3 is Jiva Swarupa Jnanam. Prayatnaha, Karma Yoga, Jiva Swarupa Jnanam. So what do we mean by Prayatnaha? Prayatnaha means understanding that any goal in life, including spiritual goal, we have to work for and attain. Nothing can be attained as a free gift. Even God will not give anything free by just, going and saying, okay, give me this, give me that, right? Give me a house, give me a wife, give me a husband, give me a degree, give me an admission in this particular university, right? Nothing can be accomplished without appropriate effort. So Bhagavan does not distribute what we want. Bhagavan gives the result for our effort. So the result for our effort will be exactly as we deserve, nothing more, nothing less. Therefore, until we accomplish the result, we have to work for it. So, if you remember this verse, you have to work for your success. Krishna said in 6:5, right? Udaredatmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet atmaiva hyatmano bandhuhu atmaiva ripuratmanah. Very useful and practical shloka. You have to work for your success and you are responsible for your future. If I don't succeed, I can't blame anybody. I have to take responsibility. I should take charge of my future and I should work. So the first thing required for this self-effort is self-confidence, right? So that's the first thing. So prayatna is possible only if I have self-confidence, and if I am diffident, I will straight away write off and say, these are all so difficult, I can't do anything, I can't accomplish this, right? So that is the first one. Self-effort is important, and the most important self-effort is disciplining our own personality. Because to accomplish success, Bhagavan has given us what? A set of instruments, a toolkit Bhagavan has given. What is that? Our own body and sense organs as well as mind and intellect, right? So they are toolkits that Bhagavan has given, and I have to make use of them properly by disciplining them and making them obedient instruments. If my mind decides, right, to do japa, it has to do during that time, because mind is supposed to be my instrument, my control, right? Similarly, tongue should not decide what it should eat. It should decide, the person, the mind, the intellect should decide what the tongue should do. Thus, the mind, the sense organs and body are instruments. First, we have to make sure that the instruments are obedient, and the entire Ashtanga Yoga Shastra is making the instruments obey my command. This is also part of Prayatnaha. So self-confidence, self-discipline and self-effort go as a package, and put together it is called Prayatnaha. Then the second topic that Lord Krishna highlights is Karma Yoga. If you remember right, it is very nice. Otherwise, I will anyway briefly repeat it. So The simpler definition of karma yoga is what? Karma yoga is proper action with proper attitude, right? So the most important set of actions which can help in all-round growth and especially spiritual growth, Lord actually calls it yajnaha, right? So proper action and proper attitude, both are important, right? So the acronym RIGHT Swamiji uses, as I said, right? The first one, R, stands for gradual reduction of all adharmic activities. We have to regularly introspect and watch our activities. Any one of them is inappropriate, which our own conscience can, will know and will want. Those adharmic activities gradually we have to reduce, right? And some of them will be difficult to give up, but gradually we have to reduce them. So reduction of adharmic activities is the first component of karma yoga, right? Adharma and jnanam can never go together. Yamadharmaraja in Kathopanishad says, Navirato duscharitat nashanto nasamahitah nashanta manaso vapi prajnanenai mapniyat. Kathopanishad 1-4. Neither the one who has not withdrawn from bad conduct, nor the one who lacks sense control, nor the one who lacks mind control, nor the one who lacks concentration can attain this Atma through knowledge. A person who continues in immoral activities, who does not withdraw from them, however much he studies Vedanta, he will not get Jnanam. And even if he gets Jnanam, that Jnanam will not work for him. Therefore, if I have to care, right, and if I have to take care of my moral personality, my ethical personality has to be refined. This is indicated by R. Then the letter I, increase dharmic activities, by which we mean the contributory activities, the selfless activities presented by Pancha Mahayajna, or as Krishna says, Yajna, Dana, Tapas, Karma. So therefore, I stands for increasing dharmic activities. The third one is D, dedicate all our activities, whether they are religious activities or family activities or our own office professional activities, any activity you mentally dedicate to the Lord, so that I will be particular about the quality of my work. I will have excellence in whatever I do, right? So only if I dedicate Ishwararpana Bhavana, or reverentially when I dedicate, I will do my best. And I have to tell my mind, I'm doing this action without looking for the consequences or knowing the consequences. Whatever it comes, I will accept it, right? So even the best doctor, right, he doesn't know the consequences. That is why he gives us a big sheet where we have to sign before a surgery, right? So therefore, he is experiencing the future as it unfolds after we have done our best, right? So preparing the mind to receive it as prasadam, right? So that is experiencing the result that comes. Karma phalam, and every karma phalam is a prasada of the Ishvara. So that is prasada bhavana. So Ishwararpana bhavana and Ishvara prasada bhavana. So in case you want to remember what the Pancha Mahayajnas are, it is Deva Yajna, Pitru Yajna, Brahma Yajna, Manushya Yajna, and Bhuta Yajna. So Deva Yajna is regular worship of Ishvara. The Ishvara is available in the form of Pancha Bhutani, right? So we always pray to the Lord, that is, and worship the Lord, mantra, japa, all of them. Then Bhuta Yajna is my contribution to animals and planets. Manushya Yajna is to the fellow human beings. Brahma Yajna is to take care of the Vedic parampara and make sure that we contribute and maintain the parampara and also the Vedas, the Veda Pathashalas, etc. That is Brahma Yajna. And then we have Pitru Yajna, which is preserving the family unit and also doing the Shraddham, Tarpanam, etc. So these 5 are the Pancha Mahayajna. It's been dealt with in detail by Krishna, and I have repeated this so many times. You can look at it, right? And all ethical and secular actions can also be included when we talk of proper action. These are all, of course, religious actions. We can also include our day-to-day actions under proper actions. Right? So, proper attitude is experiencing the results as they unfold, right? Reverentially accepting the result or phalam as Ishvara Prasada. Ishvara Arpana Bhava and Ishvara Prasada Bhava lead to equanimity. So what happens is I start understanding that all my problems in life are not caused by the world. It is caused by my wrong handling of the world. Because of the ignorance, I handle the world wrongly. Therefore, I suffer, right? If I become the wise I know how to handle the world, and the world becomes a Nandana Vanam. So ignorant I is the problem and wise I is the solution. So the diagnosis is the result of Karma Yoga, which is otherwise called Chitta Shuddhi. Right? So thus Panchamahayajna, proper action, is an important part of spiritual sadhana. Proper attitude, that is Ishwararpana Bhava and Ishvara Prasada Bhava also. So this is the second topic, Prayatna, Karma Yoga. Then the third topic is Jiva Swarupam, inquiring into my real nature through Pancha Kosha Vivekaha. Right? So Krishna talks about it in Gita. Indriyani paranyahu indriyebhyah param mamaha manasastu parabuddhihi yo buddhehe paratastu saha. Through this self-inquiry, right, about the Panchakosha, right, and the Indriya, I should come to the conclusion that body is a temporary instrument which I use for worldly transactions. So sense organs are temporary instruments. Mind and intellect are instruments I use during the waking and dream state. When I go to my deep sleep state, I don't transact at all with them, but I continue to exist. The instruments of transactions are left behind, right? So I am not any of these instruments, whereas I am the Sakshi, the witness consciousness, which is a witness across the three avasthas. The Jagrata Avastha, the Swapna Avastha, and the Sushupti Avastha. So remembering the five features, Aham, right? Aham, Atma, Asmi, and I am neither a part, product, or property of the body. I am an independent and formless principle which pervades and enlivens the body. I am not limited by the boundaries of the body, right? And I continue to survive even after the fall of the body. If at all I do not interact with the body, with the world, it is because I do not have the medium of transaction, this body, but I continue to survive as the pure Atma. And I am the same Atma, which is the Sakshi behind all the bodies in this world, as well as Ishvara. That's the Aikyam part, right? So we'll come to that. So this part deals with Jiva Swarupam, right? So Jiva Swarupa Jnanam. So Prayatna, Karma Yoga, and Jiva Swarupa Jnanam are the three topics of the Prathamashadham, the first one. Okay. So in the Madhyama Shadkaha, right, Prasadaha means grace through Upasana. Right? So Prasadaha means grace through Upasana, right? And then we will also see Upasana Yoga and Ishvara Swarupam, which is also a very big topic. So Lord Krishna introduced in the 7th chapter, right? And he defines Ishvara as the all-pervading consciousness principle plus the all-pervading matter principle. Immediately you should be able to recollect Para Prakriti and Apara Prakriti. The all-pervading consciousness is called Brahman or Para Prakriti, right? And what is God? The consciousness plus potential matter is Ishvara. So Maya Sahitam Brahman is Ishvara. That Maya, the potential matter alone, evolves into the universe during Srishti, And during Pralayam, the entire material universe goes back to potential form, right? So the name for that Maya is Apara Prakriti. Thus, Bhagavan's Maya alone appears in the form of universe. The universe resolves into Maya. Maya becomes the universe becomes Maya. So, Srishti, Pralayam, cycle is Anadi and it goes on. And behind this Maya, right, which is Bhagavan's Shakti, is Para Prakriti. The Para Prakriti is the all-pervading consciousness principle, which is exactly like that screen, right, supporting the universal appearance and disappearance. Just as space accommodates all our activities without participating in the activities, the same thing happens, right? Here also, consciousness doesn't participate but is the witness, right? So you see that space accommodates everything. All pervading light illumines all of them, but it doesn't participate in any action. Similarly, Bhagavan's Para Prakriti, the consciousness, is like the screen in which the Maya becomes the universe and the universe becomes Maya. So the real changeless nature of God is Chaitanyam. So in the first Shatkam, we said our own real nature is consciousness. In the second Shatkam, we say Bhagavan's real nature is Chaitanyam, right? So we say Bhagavan's real nature is consciousness, and this very famous verse we saw, Jyotishamapi tad jyotihi tamasap paramuchyate jnanam niyam jnanagamyam hridi sarvasya vishtitam. Right? It is the light of all lights, consciousness, and it is said to be beyond ignorance, and it is the knowledge, right? And Jiva Swarupam Chaitanyam, Ishvara Swarupam api Chaitanyam. Both are of the nature of consciousness, right? So this Madhyama Shatkam has got Prasadaha, Upasana, and Ishvara Swarupam, right? Swarupa Jnanam, right? So all three are there in the Madhyama Shatkam. Now we have to go to Charama Shatkam, right? So the Charama Shatkam, from 13th chapter to 18th chapter, Krishna introduces another three important topics, right? Number one, Sadgunaha, right? So Krishna introduces Sadgunaha, a healthy character, a moral, ethically sound character is important, right? So spirituality cannot work without character. So the emphasis on character is very high here, and you see that in the 16th chapter, Krishna names it Daivi Sampat, divine character or virtues. That is number one, right? And we will call it Sadgunaha. Gita's expression is Daivi Sampat. The second topic is Jnana Yoga, consistent and systematic study of Vedantic scriptures for a length of time, right? That is Jnana Yoga. The essential oneness of Jiva Swarupam, which is Chaitanyam, and Ishvara Swarupam, which is Chaitanyam, that is also covered here, Aikyam, right? So it is covering Sattvika Gunaha, Sattvika Gunaha meaning Daivi Sampat, Jnana Yoga, and Aikyam, right? So, and every human being instinctively, he wants to be happy, right? So he wants Sukhameva Sarvada Bhuya Dukkham Mabhut Kadachana. I want to be happy. I don't want to be unhappy. This is the universal desire for not just the human being, but for every, right? Every jiva, right? Therefore, if I have to have a healthy life, a harmonious life, I should respect the fundamental desire of every living being, right? Which is what? Every person wants happiness and does not want sorrow. So, at least we must try and make sure that there is no ahimsa, right? So, as much as possible, not giving sorrow by thought, words, or deed, right? The next is what? If possible, try to give happiness. First is try and avoid giving sorrow or pain, right? Even nice words is a great value. Even a pleasant face is a nice value because I can spread cheer outside. So all values are based on these fundamental two values, which is ahimsa and sukha pradana, right? So, and then we saw all the various gunas, and in Jnana Yoga, we saw Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasnam exposing to the teaching, because knowledge is not a material which can be physically handed over, right? It has to go through long years of consistent and systematic study, right? It can't be handed over. Otherwise, if it was possible, Krishna would have handed over in half a minute to Arjuna in the battlefield, right? So the very fact, right, Bhagavad-gita and Upanishad, right, they're all basically, Upanishad is the source of Bhagavad-gita, right? You cannot get it transferred like that by just, touch or something. Jnanam has to be transferred by the Guru and only through a teaching. And the teaching cannot be avoided. That is said by the scriptures itself, right? So, tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshyanti te jnanam jnanina tattvadarshinaha. So all the Upanishads say that. This is very important to note. Many people ask, why can't we read the Gita and a translation? And many of them attempt to read also. That is absolutely incorrect, right? So the Upanishads say, always you have to go to a guru, right? And then ask. So even when you ask Bhagavan for knowledge, Bhagavan will provide you with an opportunity to study. Bhagavan can't do anything even for Arjuna. He only gave the teaching, right? And Bhagavan has taught him, and he is a representative of the Guru Shishya Parampara, right? So all of us should note that spiritual teaching cannot be avoided. And if we want spiritual knowledge can come only through this Guru Shishya Parampara. And if I want moksha, teaching is the only way, and assimilating the teaching is the only way, right? So the permanent solution called moksha is possible only through jnanam, right? So very, very important. You cannot pay money. You cannot have any other way by which you can transfer this. It is only through systematic study that this can happen. And for the systematic study to get assimilated, there is a long journey of karma yoga, upasana yoga, and then jnana yoga, right? So all scriptures, what will they say? Now, if you actually see, before coming to moksha, every scripture will advertise saying that chant Vishnu Sahasranamam, chant Narayaniyam, etc. Why? Because through any of these, we will get Chitta Shuddhi, and gradually God will take us on this path of spiritual journey, right? Ultimately, you have to come to moksha only through Jnana Yoga. So I just realized that I skipped two of these things quickly because I was going fast. So in the Madhyama Shatkam, in Upasana Yoga, we must remember that you can either do Nama Japa, Ishtadevata Dhyanam, any of these, right? For Upasana, it can be anything. It can be Japa, it can be Puja, it can be Dhyanam, it can be meditation on the Ishtadevata, or it can be Vishwarupa Dhyanam, which is meditation on the Prakriti, the nature itself, right? In the form of Akasha, Agni, Jalam. People do Akasha Tattva meditation so that the mind can get subtler and subtler and will be able to absorb the teaching around Brahman better, right? So that was Upasana Yoga, which I skipped. Now coming back to the Charama Shatkam, Aikyam. So what we are doing now, right, is Jnana Yoga. So Swarupa Aikyam is Jiva is also a nature of consciousness, is of the nature of consciousness, right, which is enclosed or pervading the body. Ishvara's essential nature also we established as Chaitanya Swarupam. So just like space, right, within this hall and outside the room is seemingly divided by the wall. Similarly, this consciousness is also seemingly divided by so many jivas. In reality, it is not really divided, right? So by coming to understand this Aikya Swarupam, what is the advantage, right? Once we come to this, right, we can go beyond and accept the mortality of the body and the immortality of Atma. As long as I don't understand that I am the Atma, I am going to mistake myself to be this body-mind complex, and I'm going to continue to be associated with the mortal body. And a mortal body will always be subject to birth and death. Therefore, nobody can accept. If you cannot accept the mortality and the death, that insecurity will continue. So the only way for peace, security and happiness is to claim the Atma Chaitanyam, right, which is the same as that of Ishvara Chaitanya, right? There's no division at all. Both are Tat Tvam Asi, right? So it is the essential Brahman, and once I accept that, right, and I see the mortal body with objectivity, then I can have permanent peace, security and happiness. I use the body for transaction. I use all the Pancha-anatmas, body, mind, family, profession, etc. to transact in this world. But I always essentially remember that I am the Chaitanya Tattvam, right? So if I have to accept the death of my own body and the body of my near and dear ones, right, and say, okay, to quote Gita, when Yamadharma Raja comes close by, it requires looking at the body from a distance. That is possible only when I claim I am the Atma and I can look at the body from a distance. That is possible only when I understand that I am the witness consciousness. Bodies will have to come, bodies will have to go. Najayate mriyate va kadachit. We saw that in the second chapter. Not only bodies, as everything else also, whether it is relationship, whether it is position, whether it is beauty, whether it is youth, all of this, right, will have to go one day, right? Whether the hair turns gray or whether the skin turns dry, right? We have to accept both with equanimity and balance without getting attached to anything. And I have to look at the world from my real nature, which is called Chaitanya Swarupam. That is called moksha. Okay? So that is aikyam. Dukkeshvanudvignamanaha sukeshu vigatasprihaha vita raga bhayakrodha stitadhir muniruchyate. So Krishna describes the mindset of such a jnani in the second chapter, verse 54 to 72. In the 12th chapter, again from verse 13 to 20, and in the 14th chapter, again from verse 20 to 27. He just names them differently, if you recall. Very beautiful to recollect all of this. Sthita Prajna in the chapter 2, Parabhakta in chapter 12, Gunatitaha in chapter 14. Right? So, Adveshta Sarva Bhutanam Maitra Karuna Evacha Nirmamo Nirahankara Samadukka Sukhashami. So 12:13, right? My devotee is a non-hater of all beings, right? He is friendly, compassionate, and free from the mind notion, the parabhakta, right? Free from I notion. Gunanetan atityatrin dehi deha samudbhavan janma mrityu jara dukkaihi vimukto mritam ashnute. The 14th chapter, right? The gunatitaha, having gone beyond the three gunas, which are the cause of rebirth, a person becomes free from birth, death, old age and sorrow and attains immortality. Right? Shankaracharya uses this expression in his commentary. Yani mumukshoho sadhanani tani sthita prajna lakshanani. Whatever are deliberate practices of a spiritual seeker, they become spontaneous traits of a jnani. So Swamiji always says, imitate a jnani, then you will become that, right? Even after jnanam, right? Many of them, all of these traits would become natural traits, and the jnani continues to follow them, right? So, yani mumukshoho sadhanani tani sthita prajna lakshanani. Shankaracharya says that. So, if I have to enjoy that cool balanced mind. I have to gain that knowledge. Very, very important point, right? And so we saw the beginning of the Gita, right? Starting 2:11, Ashosyanan Vashoshastvam Prajnavadamsha Bhashase Gatasuna Gatasumsha Nanushocanti Panditaha. Wise people don't grieve, right? Note the word Nanushocanti Panditaha, right? And Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Braja Aham Tva Sarvapapebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. Again, do not grieve, right? So, don't grieve is the first message. Don't grieve is the last message. Freedom from attachment, freedom from grief, freedom from conflict. This is freedom from samsara, which we can get through self-knowledge. This is the message of the Bhagavad Gita, right? So, Prathamashadham, Prayatna, Karma Yoga, Jiva Swarupa Jnanam. Prayatna means effort. Madhyama Shadham, Prasadaha means God's grace, okay, means grace, right? Upasana, so Prasadaha is grace, Upasana Yoga is meditation, then Ishvara Swarupa Jnana. That's the Madhyama Shatkam. Then the Charama Shatkam, Sadgunaha, virtues, right? Then Jnana Yoga, systematic study, and then the knowledge of the essential oneness or Aikyam. In spite of the superficial differences, essential oneness of Jivatma and Paramatma. So these are the 9 topics of Gita, right? So with this, the overview of Bhagavad Gita is concluded, right? So let me take a few minutes to connect the dots and summarize. So how does a seeker gradually shift during the spiritual journey, right? So initially, we pray to one favorite God and ask him for things for myself. Ishta Devata, right? As we grow up. So the intensity also changes. Now, the Manda Bhakti means I'm looking at the God as a means for various worldly ends. I ask for exam, passing the exam, getting an admission into a university, getting a nice job, etc. Then we realize, oh my God, with the exposure to Gita, etc., I have been so selfish, praying for myself, praying for my health, etc. Right? Then I get exposed to Karma Yoga, Pancha Mahayajna, etc. And I also start mental prayers of japa, meditation, etc. And with this Gita exposure, slowly I do not use God for selfish purposes anymore. And I see God as an end goal. God himself as an end goal. Right? So even Jnana Vairagya Siddhyartham or Chitta Shuddhi Prapyartham. At least we go towards Jnana Vairagya Siddhyartham. Let me get Jnana Vairagya and let me have mental refinement. Right? Slowly the shift happens with Upasana Yoga that we saw, right? And the Karma Yoga that we saw. Right? And then we completely stop selfish prayers, right? We only say Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, or Swasti Prajapyam Paripalayantam, right? So we completely stop selfish prayers, and instead of getting too hung up on a particular devata, going to a particular temple, etc., we start looking at God in all forms, everything around us as Vishwarupa Ishvara. Then we get exposed to Jnana Yoga, God as non-different from myself, right? So I start seeing God, Aikyam, right? I start seeing God as non-different from myself. So the concept of God being formless, right? Or maximum the God being appearing as the universe, right? So I start seeing that, right? And then what happens is my focus completely shifts, right? The big leap is Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga continue to be practiced, but for Loka Kshemartham. Regardless of the ashrama I am in, for the benefit of the society, I do Karma Yoga, I do Upasana Yoga. And of course, my view of Bhakti itself, right? Everything becomes Uttama Bhakti, Arupa Bhakti, right? So I don't pray in the form of one Devata, and my results also I'm only doing for the benefit of the society, right? Because I have understood Aikyam, and then I do these prayers for Loka Kshemartha. So we also saw this as 5 stages of Bhakti, from Artha to Artharthi to Jignasu to Jnani Bhakta. We saw that, right? So, and in this journey from here to here, very importantly, prayers started from Sakama, right? Sakama means me, myself, my family, my profession, etc. And the intensity also, right? Finally, you start moving from that individual God to God as non-different from myself, right? And that is the best form of bhakti. And from Sakama Bhakti, we have moved on to Nishkama Bhakti, right? So this is the big leap that has happened in the spiritual journey. And also a very, very important point is from Jagat Karta Ishvara. This we miss actually, and this is a very, very important point. We first are introduced as God, right, is the creator. Very important. We saw this in Introduction to Vedanta. Please go back and connect to it. So we started out with Jagat Karta is Ishvara. We visualize God as a person because we are used to intelligent human beings as intelligent beings, right? As human beings, we imagine a very intelligent God who's omniscient and who's omnipotent. And since we don't see him, we imagine him behind the clouds, right? And he is the Karta of this world, Jagat Karta Ishvara. And then we move on to Jagat Karanam Ishvara. If God is the creator of the world, right, then what is the raw material, right? So he is the creator as well as the created Jagat, right? So Jagat Karanam Ishvara from Jagat Karta Ishvara. So this is what we are going to see in Taittiriya Upanishad. Tasmadva etasmad atmana akasha sambhutah. So slowly the Upanishad is taking us from Jagat Karta Ishvara to Jagat Karanam Ishvara. Mundaka Upanishad starts with the spider example, the best example that we can give for Upadana Karanam and Nimitta Karanam. The intelligent cause as well as the material cause. The spider is the cause for the web. It is intelligently weaving the web out of its own material. So it's the best example that Upanishads can give, and it has chosen this example, and that is what we see in Mundaka Upanishad. And later on in Taittiriya Upanishad, the process of creation is completely described, right? And then ultimately, right, in Mandukya Upanishad, Jagat Adhishtanam Ishvara, right, says there is nothing in this world, right, other than Brahman. There is no prapancham, prapanchopashamam, shantam, shivam, advaitam. There is only Brahman and nothing else, right? Finally, we move to Jagat Adhishtanam Ishvara, who is the ultimate reality. So this is the journey of a spiritual seeker, and Gita presents this in a way that the grihasthas can follow, and it is very practical and it can be implemented. And people or students seeking to understand more in terms of this second slide that I showed, the journey from Jagat Karta to Jagat Karanam to Jagat Adhishtanam Ishvara. If these words made sense the first time, then we would be jnanis by now. It takes years of teaching and listening to understand this part, which is what the Upanishads are actually teaching, right? And Swamiji has chosen this order, and the more I learn, the more I'm able to appreciate why this order, right? From Mundaka Upanishad to Kena, Kata, Kaivalya, Taittiriya, and Mandukya Upanishad and Karika to understand the second part of the journey better, right? So now for a few final words on the teaching. Ajivitam trayam sevyam Vedanto Gururishwaraha Adau Jnanapte Paschat Kritagnatvam Nivruttaye. Initially to gain knowledge, and after gaining knowledge, jnana prapti, to avoid ungratefulness towards them, you should always worship three things throughout your life: the Vedas, the Guru Parampara, and Ishvara. We should never forget the three of them, and very, very important. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, 13th June, we will be sending an email with the link. So we may not have a webinar. So you will get the instructions on an email, and then you can take this test. I will let you know tomorrow whether we can even send the email slightly earlier, maybe by 7:30 itself. I will let you know tomorrow. We'll give you about an hour or hour and a half, and you can write it. It is all objective. Now, tomorrow, 6th June, we have a very small function. I will be doing the Gita Mahatmyam. Please make sure you attend this. Even people who normally listen to recordings, if possible, please attend this in person tomorrow online. And 7:15 to 7:20, we will have chief guest welcome, and then we will have an Ashirvadam by the chief guest, Dr. B. Mahadevan, professor at IIM Bangalore, and he's a great Vedantin himself and teaches a lot of courses. And then following that, we would like to have feedback from students, especially those of you who have attended right through. We would like to hear from you what you felt about this journey itself. And so tomorrow, this is the program. But first part, 6:25, as usual, we will do the Gita Dhyana Shloka chanting, and we will complete the Gita Mahatmya. Any questions on today's class? Gopala Venkateshwaran Mahodaya, you are unmuted. You need to unmute yourself. You're self-muted, sir.
I'm audible now?
Go ahead.
Now, madam, after hearing all this, it looks life is like a drama, whole thing. And we are all characters in that. Because I don't want, I have not asked to be born. But I am thrown into the world. That is due to karma and all that we can say. So when you go back like that, rewind, the first human being, why he has been created? What is this basis of creation? That is what is perplexing. Why when I am not I am not asked to be born here, but I am born. I have to go through all the experiences and come back. Is it a test or is it a drama in which I have to play a certain role?
Okay. First and foremost, we must remember that Srishti is Anadi. We are so used to linear thinking, right? Because all through our childhood, in school, etc., we've been used to this start, end, linear thinking. Whereas Srishti is Anadi. So when Srishti is Anadi, what it means is, if you have infinite number of species, these species have always been there, right? At what point they were human beings, they became animals, they became unicellular animals, or they started from unicellular, when this is all There is no beginning because it is anadi. Now, having said that, this journey can end only with jnanam and moksha, right? So for that, as human beings, we forget something when we ask these questions. We forget that Krishna clearly says that your effort, your prayatnam is very, very important. There are two factors at play whenever you are operating in this world. One of the factors is the law of karma, and the second factor is your effort, your prayatna, or your confidence, your free will. You can influence your future, and that is what is in your hands. And please do not waste this great birth of the human birth. Durlabam Trayametat, we spoke about it from Viveka Chudamani. The Manushya Janma is very, very rare. And having got this Manushya Janma, can we use our effort to influence this law of karma moving forward so that we at least get better Janma, right? In such a way that we can get out of this Anadi cycle. And there is only one way of getting out of this Anadi cycle. This is what the Shastras say, right? And our journey is to understand and assimilate this and work towards it.
Thank you, madam.
Is there anybody else who has any question? Okay, more importantly, I would like to get feedback from people today, few minutes. Did you get all your questions answered in a way? Yes, there are a few questions only Upanishads can answer, but in general, whatever doubts you started out in the initial classes, did it get answered? Yeah, there's someone who has raised their hands. Yeah, Ravichandra Mahodaya, go ahead.
Namaskaram, Mahodaya. So it was very nice and a refreshing new look at this thing. I was just showing my wife and daughter. They were also seeing this. See, these shlokas are there for last 5,300 years, but still without contradicting from the flavor of interpretation of the great people like Shankara or Shaina. Still there is provision for someone to do a very original kind of an analysis and reclassify all these things. And this is how any student should go through any spiritual text. God doesn't become happy just because we salute him, but when we try to seriously understand his teachings and implement them in our life in our own way, then he will be much more happier. So it's great. And yes, truly, to answer your next question, many questions that arise when we study first. For example, sarva dharman parityajya. So somebody can a Krishna crazy or Vishnu crazy devotee can say that, leave other dharmas and come to me, I will only do. This is a crude way of interpretation, but then what it means is, by doing an action only an end will come. Like that, that intention is there before you embark on any action, that you leave it and totally rely on me, is the right meaning of it. This we understand only through a guru, and you have been very good in taking us this. We would like to continue in your further Upanishads or anything else that you take. We would be no.
Thank you. Dhanyavada. So, very nice. There's somebody else. Yes. So the questions and doubts were answered, right, in the subsequent chapters. Oh, somebody has a question on what is liberation. So liberation is moksha, right? And what is moksha? Moksha is understanding my real nature. The aikyam that I discussed is understanding that the essential nature of me, this body mind, and the essential nature of the Ishvara and the Jagat is all one and the same consciousness. By claiming my higher nature, my outlook towards life and the way I deal with people, the whole shift happens. This shift happens. So for some people, immediately it clicks. For some people, it takes a while because our mind is not in that state to accept the teaching. So through Upasana Yoga, Karma Yoga, many years of going through this teaching, we are able to claim that higher nature. And once we claim that higher nature, we are free from samsara, or what we say FIR reduction, from emotional upheavals in life. We are able to face life much better. I hope it answers your questions, Ramaya Mahodaya. Okay, that's nice. So there are no more questions here. Okay, there's one more, I think. Okay, thank you very much for an elaborate clarification of the various verses of the Bhagavad Gita, and many points otherwise not clear were cleared. Very clear and simple. Okay, this is all to the Guru Parampara, and I think my Guru and his Guru, Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati and Swami Paramarthananda. And I think the way they have taught, it has really been a wonderful journey. So anyway, tomorrow, all of you, please come. We will do the Gita Mahatmyam. I'm looking forward to it. Dhanyavadaha Punarmilama.